Okay, so what do you think? And I'd love for you to drop it in the comments. What do you think would be like going no contact with a narcissistic person if you live in a small town? So let's put it this way. It is not easy to go no contact no matter where you live, but small towns raise big issues when it comes to narcissistic relationships. And I do think that in media of all kinds, there's such a bias to assume that people live in medium to big cities where it's easy to kind of maybe get lost and not run into people. And then we forget that many, many people do live in places where there's one grocery store, one post office, one main road. Many people may go, for example, to the same place of worship or the same gym. There may only be one primary school, one high school. You get the drift, right? And that means it's not even if or when, but how often you're going to run into the narcissistic person you're hoping to go no contact with. And this raises multiple issues. First, it complicates the issue, this small town thing, of whether you even decide to end the relationship or not. While in many narcissistic relationships, leaving is definitely challenging. Obviously, it may not always be physically dangerous, but it's typically psychologically really problematic. And it never really feels fully safe. And again, we always assume that people can get up and move someplace far away to get away from someone if they need to. But the social ties, networks, owning a home, employment, that can make it difficult. And guess what, folks? You know what small towns are often near? Just other small towns, which are often hard to just go to and set up a new life in and create a new social network within. So being in a smaller town can definitely make the decision to end or leave one of these relationships really fraught. And that means any escalation in the relationship will be potently felt. And if you believe you will be triggered in some way by seeing them again, like I said, it's not an issue of if or when you will see them, but how often and how soon. It's like having to work in the same building as someone you ended a really problematic relationship with. And the tricky part is that because of this, you may stay in the relationship. And I deliberately did not say choose to stay because it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like I have to figure this mess out and stay in this because I can't leave here. Again, the kids, social ties, owning a home, other responsibilities. And if I do leave, I will have very little support if I do. And this can be doubly problematic if you have a narcissistic family of origin. And so it may feel like if I leave this, deal with the mess it would be, and really don't have a soft place to land, then you really feel stuck. Second, any smear campaign, flying monkeys, and enabler-related stuff is going to be far more potent in a small town. Remember, while healthy people don't go around saying bad things about a former partner, listen, the narcissistic person gets out fast and gets out there furious with their news flash. So before you know it, people are hearing about whatever narrative the narcissistic person chooses to spin about you, or they may share things you told them in confidence, etc. You know the drill. So a breakup with a narcissistic person can do damage to the social networks that you have established in a smaller community. It may create tension. And sadly, the narcissistic person will often capitalize on triangulation to share gossip and create sort of little factions. So now it's not as bad as running into your narcissistic ex in the grocery store, but the many people who may now be looking at you sideways because of what they were told about you. Third thing to keep in mind, and this sort of relates to the second point, all of these things happening may mean that you lose social support that you desperately need. We know that community and having people around you who get it and people who you can connect with and feel and who see you are keys to healing. And managing a narcissistic relationship in a small town can burn some of that down. Listen, it's not always the case that if you leave a narcissistic relationship that you will lose your support. You may have a situation where other people have been burned by your narcissistic partner or family member or whatever, and so they'll be cheering you on. And then you're just largely having to manage the stress of having to live in a small community and running into your ex. But for those who may see part of their social network carved out because they were enably or flying monkey-ish, or they have their own family and system in the town that enables them, it can mean that just when you need a healing space, you can't find it. Finding therapists, especially therapists who understand narcissistic abuse, is going to be much harder in a small town as well. Fourth, and this is what I'm about to share next, is a different angle. If you live in a small town and you have a narcissistic family of origin, you may have no partner, you may have a narcissistic partner, you may have a lovely partner, but you are in this small world of a small town with your narcissistic family. Again, as I said, if folks in town are able to see your narcissistic parent or narcissistic sibling for the problem that they are, then folks may view you as someone who's stuck in a bad situation in a really pain-in-the-neck family. However, and we know especially with grandiose, communal, and self-righteous narcissistic folks, your parent or your sibling or your grandparent may have done one hell of a job of portraying themselves as a martyr or a pillar of the community, or your family has been there for years and the ties run deep. So there may even be a nostalgia about some toxic folks in your family. In a small town, let's face it, no contact may simply not be possible. Again, we're back to that idea of the one grocery store. An estrangement, or if one family member not talking to others, if you are still there, you may be sneered or looked at suspiciously. And if you are the one who went or wants to go no contact, the social disapproval, again, can really feel hard to endure. Depending on how embedded your narcissistic family of origin is in the community, it may also hurt your ability to get social support. You may feel stuck in having to play a role of, look at what a happy family we are, while enduring all of the manipulative goodies that are part of being from this family. And this can be very challenging because you may actually love your small town, but have siblings that moved away to get away from the family system, and you can feel torn. Small towns are more likely to have families that have been around for a while. So that can mean that there are obligations, expectations, and an almost fictional lore around your family for generations, for better or worse. All of this, especially given the sort of loss of identity that comes from being from a narcissistic family system, can mean that you are still living under the large shadow of your identity being the family instead of you being seen as you yourself, as an individual. Small towns can also be tricky because, for example, the narcissistic person in your life may have been the football hero, the prom queen, the child of the town's beloved mayor, the big business owner who runs lots of local businesses, the favorite baseball coach. You get the idea. And that mythology can mean that you believe that no one will believe you when you share about your relationship, and the fact is you may be right. Geography matters, and sometimes, strangely, you could view it as a small town being embedded in a larger city. For example, close-knit neighborhoods, ethnic enclaves that are embedded within a city. And these little regions may feel and run like a small town, though because you are embedded within a larger city, there may be other opportunities you have to link into other social supports, which may simply not be possible geographically in a smaller town. Listen, I'm the first to say there can be a blessing in small towns, connection, day-to-day conversations, history. But going through the rigors of a narcissistic relationship in a place where there is no plan B, where smear campaigns can have major effects, and where you may feel that staying isn't a choice, but it's a necessity, a survival strategy. I have no doubt that some of you are saying that these things happen to you in your small town or even in your sub-community within a larger city, and all of that makes sense. Who knows? Maybe any time we go through a narcissistic breakup, our world, our community can feel like a small town because our world narrows. We lose people and we feel isolated. But in a literal small town, whether it is a romantic breakup, disengaging from a family, or even quitting a job, it can feel like you are now stuck in a world where people are choosing sides. And what once felt like a welcoming, safe space not only feels triggering and lonely, but it can feel like there's nowhere else to turn. Thanks again.